So welcome. Hello, my name is Max. I'll be your moderator for today, and this is a POCACITO network update. Very glad to see a lot of new faces and also a lot of familiar faces. I can still say Happy New Year. It's not too late for that. We're all very excited about this year, I believe. A lot of people hope it's going to be better than the last one. And so in that sense, we want to kick it off with a real great POCACITO network update. Our session today is Repair Revolution, How Fixers Are Transforming Our Throwaway Culture. And that links very neatly with our POCACITO mission. So I'm very glad that we have here today with us one of the authors of the book. Let me check if I need to let somebody in. Perfect. Okay. So we have here with us today one of the authors, Elizabeth Knight. She is a marketing executive and the author of Welcome Home, and she lives in Warwick in New York State. And she will be talking to us today. And I'll just give you a very quick pitch of why we're talking about this. Every year, people throw away a lot of stuff, tons of things. We usually don't see them anymore once we put them in the bin or in the bag, but obviously they're still on the planet and they're accumulating somewhere. Some places are running out of landfill space. Other people incinerate their waste and pollute the air that way. Either way, it's not a real solution. And so the book really addresses this challenge, not only on the pure physical side, but also on the emotional and on the societal and interpersonal level. This is, to me, I think, one of the big assets is that connecting, empowering, engaging, creating agency is a big topic in the book. This is, I think, really powerful. And I think we really need this right now for our home communities, for the whole country and beyond. I believe we have people here on the call from all kinds of places. So as a first warm-up exercise, I would encourage you all to type in the chat from where you're calling in today. You can be as specific as you want. You don't have to put in your actual home address, right? So if you just want to say the state or just the country, that's fine. If you want to be more specific, that's great too. If you want to say where you are in that state. So we see here Salt Lake City, Utah, Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, Anchorage, Alaska. Good morning. And wow. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Tacoma, Washington. We have somebody living in Philly, Pennsylvania, and working in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. So we have Denver, Colorado, Philly again. So strong group from there. Rosendale, New York, Albany, New York. So let me see. We have San Antonio, Texas. We have LA in California, East Hampton, Massachusetts, Copenhagen, Denmark. Good evening. That's wonderful. North Yorkshire in the UK. Great. So more Europeans. St. Louis, Missouri, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, New Braunfels, Texas. More people from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Hi, Michelle. New York City, then again, Rosendale, and then Baltimore, Maryland. Wonderful. It's a little bit biased towards the East Coast, but Elizabeth, it is a mix. So we have people from everywhere. Nobody from Asia, but who knows? Maybe that was not a good time for them. Anyway, Elizabeth, so glad to have you here today. And thank you for joining us. So maybe you can tell us a little bit how you came to write this book, which is, I mean, it's a big book. It's not like a 50-page pamphlet. It's with every annex and all of that. It's way over 300 pages. So it's a real book.
Yes, it is. And it was about 1.5 years worth of effort. And I'm often asked, well, how did you and John come up with this? And it backs up a bit. John started the first repair cafe in New York State in 2013. I started the one in a small town 60 miles north of New York City in 2016. So, but it turns out that I had sort of known John ahead of that. He and I were both involved in different sustainability projects where we lived, and then our paths crossed at an event or two. And then when I was getting ready to start my repair cafe, luckily I didn't have to start from scratch. So I called John and was asking, well, what about this? What about that? And then after I got my repair cafe started, it seemed just natural to me. At the end of each event, I would sit down with the job tickets, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the Repair Cafe project, people come and fill out a slip of paper that's a waiver, and it says, what are they bringing? What's wrong with it? So I always kept those. And at the end of every Repair Cafe, I would sit down and write a report. How many people came on average? For us, about 80. Where did they come from? 13 to 19 different towns on average. And because of our location, they often came from 3 states. We're on the border of at least 2. And I would write about what did they bring, what was wrong with it, was there any interesting, quirky story. Some of the things that people would write, like there was one memorable job ticket that said 2 kittens chewed wire, not 1 cat, not animal, 2 kittens. Or the woman who wrote metal horse busted butt. So you can't make this stuff up, but I wanted the people who volunteered their time and their skills for 4 hours every other month to know how much I really valued those gifts. And I want to be able to share with the people who worked on the small electrics team or the digital team, didn't have time to find out what went across the room at the small bike repair or the knife sharpening or the sewing team. So it helped connect the people who were the volunteers with each other. And it helped us get a handle on, well, what are the most popular repairs? What kinds of parts do we need that we didn't think of? So out of that, John had been volunteering his woodworking skills at a repair cafe other than the one he started. And a woman came up to him and said, they told me that you're the person I need to talk to. And she said, I'm a literary agent, and I think there's a book in this. So he had a contract to write a book about 6 months before I even knew about that. But then he called me up one day and said, you know, those reports that you send after every repair cafe, that's the voice the book needs to make the human heart connection. So that's how I got started. And then I ended up doing many other things with the book just based on the experiences that I had had and the kinds of information that people always ask, like, how do I get one in my town? What kind of people are you looking for volunteers? What am I supposed to tell them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, and these are, of course, questions I think probably a lot of people on the call have, because, you know, I've read about repair cafes before, and actually I met Martine, and that was also kind of how this all came together. Martine Postma, the founder of the Repair Cafe idea, she is from Amsterdam, and she was part of a POCACITO program in 2019, where we went to Phoenix and to Baltimore with her. And that was very inspirational to meet different communities across the US and trying to motivate people to try or to venture into the field of repair cafes. And so you're a veteran in a sense of the repair cafes.
Well, let's start by asking people, how many people, please raise your hand, know what a repair, have you ever been to a repair cafe? And yeah. Donna, you're one of the organizers for yours in Hastings, are you not?
It's my daughter, Lindsay Jean Taylor. I'm her mother.
Oh, really? Lindsay's yes. Fabulous. She's one of the organizers. So you should be.
The 2 times they did it in person, I happened to be abroad, not on purpose, but then they did Zoom one, and I was there. So that's why I raised my hand. But I have typed up those little tickets.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So if you see this on your screens, depends a little bit what tool you're using to be part of the program. There's a poll up now where you can actually enter in real time whether you've been to a repair cafe or to a tool library, which is similar but different, or to a fix-it, which is also very similar.
Fix-it clinic.
Yeah. So you can vote now, and everybody else can see how the votes are going. But of course, it's anonymous. So again, no shaming there. If you haven't, just say neither. And we leave that open for a few minutes so that we can see how many people voted. And Elizabeth, if you want to continue, so we have we have 11, 12. Well, they're coming in now. I think people found the polling function.
Okay.
I'll leave it open.
For those
I didn't find.
Okay, so it's on the far right. You should have an option on the right, in the top right corner, where you can see the number of attendees. It's like a little pictogram with people, right. And then a 32. Number. And then you see a chat, like a bubble from a comic book. That's for the chat function. Next to it are 3 geometrical shapes. That's a circle, a triangle, and a square. And if you click on that, there's the polls underneath. If you can't find it, you can also type it into the chat or just yell it into the room. We take any form of input here.
Okay. Well, perhaps I should explain what a repair cafe is for those who are uninitiated. The simplest explanation is that it is a free community meeting place where people who have the skills to fix things volunteer to fix it for other people, just because, as one of the 13-year-old boys who volunteers at our repair cafe to help people carry things in and out of the door and help manage traffic, he says, it's a place where there are people willing to help you, no matter who you are, for no other reason than to help you in the best way possible. And it is very similar to a fix-it clinic in the sense that the point is to reinforce skills that might be lost, how-to hands-on skills, to teach the people who don't yet have them how they can learn to fix things themselves. And we have the people who do the volunteering to do the fixing are called repair coaches, because they will coach you through the process, or if you're not quite ready, they will do it for you while you're sitting there watching and learning. And we always say it's not a drop-off service.
Right. Elizabeth, what would you say is the difference between a fix-it clinic, and a repair cafe?
The key thing is in a fix-it clinic, the coaches will not touch the item. They will coach you through every step of it. Here's the right tool. This is how you take off the back of it. At a repair cafe, the coach may do it for you if you're not capable or learning. So it's the coach will be hands-on per request with a repair cafe, but with the fix-it clinic, it's all about teaching you to do it from the very beginning. But the mission of them is not just tool literacy, that everybody has in common, and it's also the sense of they themselves, the fix-it clinics even say that repair cafes are somewhat more about community building, and theirs is more about, quote, tool literacy. But it ends up with the same goal of keeping, as one of our coaches say, useful things useful and out of the landfill.
Great. So just to give you an idea from the poll, we had 17 votes, so not everybody voted in there, but I saw some people voted in the chat. So let's see, we have 11 people haven't been to any of these projects. And so that's clearly the majority. And then 2 people said they've been to a fix-it, 2 people have used a tool library, and 2 people have been to a repair cafe. And actually in the chat, we can see somebody's been to a repair cafe in Denmark. So it shows just how international this is.
Yep.
And the students started it there. So it's for all age groups. That's something I wanted to ask you, Elizabeth. Do you need to have like a whole group of experienced engineers and craftspeople to start it, or can anybody start a repair cafe?
I'd say anybody can start a repair cafe. I am not very good at fixing things. I can sew on a button and take up a hem, and I can do a very rough patch. For most repair cafes, there's about 10 basic categories. You know, small electronics, small tabletop appliances like blenders, irons, digital devices, things made of wood, soft toys, clothing, bicycles, knife and tool sharpening, basic categories. I wanted 10 categories and 10 repair coaches when I opened mine. But it doesn't have to be, although many of the people who like to volunteer for a repair cafe or fix-it clinics have had engineering backgrounds, but it's not confined to that. I made a list when we were writing the book about what kind of people volunteer to be part of a repair cafe. And a short list is artists, authors, attorneys, bakers, beekeepers, craftspeople, career counselors, military veterans, lawyers, moms, dads, grandparents, graphic designers, real estate agents, psychotherapists, teachers, students, tool and die makers, town board members. It's anybody who's interested in helping keep useful things useful. Not everybody who volunteers hands-on skills. You also need people. It's called, as you know, Max, a repair cafe, because Martina, who founded it, found that people feel more comfortable when they can sit down at a table and chat with each other. So there's somebody who's the official welcome table. With you need a team of people to have people check in, tell them how it works for those who've never been there, explain what how the job ticket works, traffic management. You've got a lamp and a sewing machine you need fixed, which line is shorter, and then keeping an eye on, now it's time to move them along to the next station. So there's a variety of tasks. All it takes is someone like one person who we were able to quote her in the book. She said, you know, I volunteer because it's so much more satisfying than making a donation to an organization in my community. Another woman who started a repair cafe in upstate New York, Wendy Mahaney, had her PhD in ecology. And she said it just wasn't enough to talk about what we ought to be doing. She wanted to be involved hands-on. She doesn't do the repairs, but she, like me, was one of the organizers. And she paired with the local library because they wanted to teach people how to learn things. It's not libraries now, as you said, tool libraries. They don't things beyond books. It's hands-on skills.
Great.
Does that answer?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
That's great. And I wanted to also give a big shout out. We have participants here from Down Under, from Australia.
Wow.
Karen at Mended. And Karen, thank you for joining us. That's really great. The longest travel distance for sure for your electrons. I hope you enjoy it. I don't dare asking what time it is there, but it's great. And thank you for asking, where's John? Yeah, you joined a little bit later, so John is somehow not here, but if he joins at some point, we'll be happy. But Elizabeth is here, and we have also, of course, a kind of, a significant group of participants here and getting a lot of comments in the chat, and feel free to continue the chat. I see here Chloe says that they're having a Facebook group for sharing tools in the neighborhood.
Oh, great.
So it's not exactly a tool library, but it's kind of a variant on that. So that's interesting too, how you have new forms coming up, new maybe also where social media or new tools come together with concepts that were more physical in person. And
like we say, the point is you don't need to own, the average life of a drill is used something like 13 times. You don't need to own the drill. You just need a hole. And that could be the neighbor down the block or the tool library.
Great, great. Elizabeth, a big question. Now, since the book came out, I mean, we all know there's been the COVID crisis, and your format is a lot about bringing people together in a physical space, some sort. So that's a big question mark. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm really thinking we should do this here. There is actually a repair cafe where I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's only happening twice a year, so it's not very often, but it did not happen last time it was supposed to happen. What's your experience or your suggestion for people to deal with the current virus crisis?
Well, the first thing is be safe and be sensible, and don't open up until it's appropriate to do that. But up until the winter came in the Hudson Valley, there were a number of outdoor repair cafe events. Everybody was masked up. They wore glasses. Things were wiped down. They wore glasses. They wore masks. Things were wiped down before they were handed over to the table. But as it said, it was outdoors. It isn't appropriate to do it indoors now. And as one of Michelle, who runs the Austining one, said, as much as we all miss it, it's just not sensible to do it. It's not worth the risk to the volunteers or the public. But there's been a huge surge in Zoom repair events, which have gotten much, much better as they've developed. There are a variety of ways that they're run. There's one run by a gentleman, Don Fick, in the North Carolina, and it's called Repair Cafe TV. And you sign up ahead of time. You talk about what it is that you need to be fixed. You're given an idea about what kinds of tools you need to have available, and you hold up your thing, and there's a variety of coaches, and sometimes it goes to a breakout room, and somebody will actually walk you through, this is how you diagnose the problem with the vacuum cleaner, the lamp, etc. And those are now international. John was working with someone, I think, in Sweden, who was trying to repair a sofa with the man's young daughter, and then they later sent the picture of the two of them lounging on the sofa. But check out Repair Cafe TV. And those are after they've filmed them, so they're available to go back later. One of the best ones I saw, educational for me, was all the different versions of glue and how to tell which one you needed for your project.
Excellent, excellent. So, so you think the virus basically altered how this is happening, but did not stop it from happening?
Exactly. And also in my area, we've been doing a version of sort of an ad hoc drop-off. I'm still continuing to get emails and phone calls. One woman said that she had bought a manual typewriter for her young grandson who had was on the autism spectrum, and she said, and the thing doesn't work, I can't make the keys work. So I contacted Fix-It Bob, who does a lot of our small electric repair, and said, would you be willing to take a look at this? If you talk to her, tell her how you, the grandmother, how you want to see the item and work out a safe way to do it. So they agreed to meet. It was cleaned, handed over. He took a look at it. He was able to fix it. So we've got 4 or 5 people who will do simple, basic repairs like that. They either agree to meet in a public space. Sometimes they've met in a grocery store parking lot to hand over the item. Sometimes it's a matter of I'm going to drive up in my car. I will get out of my car, put it on your doorstep, ring the doorbell. I'll sit in my car. You talk to me on the phone, and I'll tell you what I think is the problem. So we've been doing that in a very ad hoc way, and it's been successful. Small scale, but successful.
Great. And of course, let's not forget, I mean, the vaccinations have started, and sooner or later we'll be past the situation, and then hopefully we can go back to being social again, because this is a big part of it, Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's about fixing items and avoiding getting things to the landfill, but it's also about building community and bringing people together. And I think that's really important, both in smaller communities and in big cities too. Do you have experiences from people running repair cafes in big city environments?
Seattle's got I think there's somebody on the line from Seattle, yes?
Right.
Seattle's got a terrific, Seattle and also Portland have a lot of repair cafes. I have not had the pleasure of visiting either one of them, so they can tell you more about that than I. They're all run independently. We always say that you can't make a template for this is the way you run a repair cafe. It has to be a grassroots movement based on the needs of the people the organizers and the volunteers have decided to serve, and the people who are going to be available and the skills that they share and where they meet. That's individual to every organization. I also wanted to say there are people from Philly. There is a repair cafe up until the pandemic stopped it in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and it was started by a high school boy who partnered with a makerspace when it first opened. So it's as unique. Some organizations in cities or in small towns might meet in church basements. They might meet in libraries. Libraries are big supporters of not just tool libraries, but repair cafes, school gyms. It's very personal. It's very specific to the community.
Great, excellent. And we do have a lot of questions coming in, Elizabeth. And if you feel ready for the questions already, we can start it. I'm gonna go first with Donna. Donna, you raised your hand. Did you want to ask a question or comment?
I don't know how I did that. I think I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm enjoying it though.
Excellent.
I'm learning all the options. They're very interesting.
Yes, there are many different options. And Elizabeth, you also mentioned this in the beginning, that there's no prescribed set of areas or fields that need to be covered. So I could specialize on a certain range of repairs with a repair cafe if I wanted.
Right. I can tell you that the most requested repair across the country for every repair organization that I know about is lamp repair. And when I started our repair cafe and I was trying to get a publicity going, I had a member from the Chamber of Commerce come to me and say, don't you think you're going to put somebody out of business by repairing lamps? And I said, well, where do we get a lamp repaired around here? And besides that, most of the lamps that come in for a repair cafe, they've belonged to somebody in the family for years.
That's right.
It's not the same lamp that you go buy at a big box store. I had a woman standing in line waiting to be helped one day, and she's brandishing this lamp, and she said, you see this? This is a dumb lamp. She said, but it sits on my nightstand, and I don't want to have to go a half an hour drive to a big box store to spend $80 to replace it. And then you can't replace the one that was grandmother's lamp that now is on a little girl's nightstand. So yes, lamps are important. Basic sewing, patching jeans, soft toys, knife and tool sharpening, bikes. Now, bikes, I would think in cities would be even more popular than they are in the area where I am, because so many people get around on a bike in the city.
Right. And of course, there's lots of things breaking, and you talk about it in the book too, about planned obsolescence,
Planned obsolescence, yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, too many things now are designed deliberately so that you can't fix it. And as the repair manifesto says, if you can't fix it, meaning you need a special tool that you can't get, you as the consumer, or you don't have the software to fix it, or the battery is glued in and you'll break the back if you take it out, you don't really own it. This is the antithesis. The Repair Cafe, Fix-It clinics, it's the antithesis of that. And the Right to Repair movement is now active in, I think, 25 states. And Massachusetts last fall just passed legislation that says that manufacturers have to make more information available, not just beyond cars. It used to be that you could only take your car to be repaired to the franchise dealer. That's not legal in Massachusetts. You ought to be able to take it to Fred down the street. And we're working on, we and people who are interested in the right to repair movement are also trying to combat companies largely with digital devices is the biggest problem. But surprisingly, John Deere Tractor Company, now that they've got a lot of software in the item, you can't fix it yourself. John Deere makes more money making you take your tractor back to them than fixing it yourself. There's something really wrong with that.
Yeah, and that's of course an interesting interpretation of free market economy when what you say, you actually don't really own it. And once you start repairing it, very often you lose the warranty on it.
Yeah.
Tricks like that. So let's see if we can cover some of the many questions here. I mean, an important one, and I'm biased, of course, I'm an economist, is a question, how do you fund your program?
That's surprisingly, it's donations. First of all, the main thing is get a location that you can use for free. I don't know of any repair cafe that has to pay rent. Your volunteers are volunteering for free, although as Peter Mui, the founder of the iFixit Clinic, said, you really need to invest in your volunteers, buy them really good pizza for lunch. We put out donation jars at the check-in, check-out table, and we put one on the cafe and snack table. We've always been able to meet our expenses. The other thing our repair cafe does, and many others do, we have a basic electrical parts box, wires, switches, and we charge the person who needs the repair at what it costs us if they want to buy the part from us. Often they'll bring their own part, and we're happy to put that in, but unfortunately, often the part they bring isn't the right one, or we're happy to support the local hardware store down the station, say down the street, go in 10 miles and not 10 miles, 10-minute drive and tell them you need X. But we've never, because you're not paying anybody and you're not paying rent. Also, one of the important things when you're starting something like this is get a sponsor. We were sponsored by Sustainable Warwick, which is under an umbrella organization to help support other not-for-profits, and they pay for our insurance. We have insurance 6 times a year when we hold the events. But we've always been able to make, it's not about making money. And most people, surprisingly, when they bring in something to be repaired, they're so grateful. Let me tell you a story. Some places put suggested donation $5 on the jar. We don't. But I do, having been in the marketing business, we do seed the jar with $5 and $1 bills when we open up so they get an idea. But some people can't afford to put anything in, and some people put in a lot. One time, a woman came in with her husband who needed something fixed. Her father-in-law needed a knife sharpened, and there was a third item. So she put money in the jar on the way out, and then she saw me take the money out of the jar and hand it to the man who brings in the tubs. We also collect non-perishable food items, and we give them to the food pantry. We ask people if they can bring a canned or box item. We'd like that as a donation. So she saw me take the money out and hand it to the man who was collecting the food pantry. And she said, he's not the one who fixed the lamp. And I said, I know, but we support the local food pantry with our donations, and we've met our expenses today. It was $80 for the pizza and drinks. And she said, oh, she took another $20 out of her purse and walked over and handed it to him directly. So it does feel
that's a great story. And it's really great because it shows you also how you're not trying to create a big nonprofit structure for yourself, but how you work with a community. And that's another question that I had on my lips. It was about, of course, this last year was a lot about the virus, but it was also about, racial equity and diversity. And how do you see repair cafes having a role in making our society more inclusive and more coming together?
Many repair cafes deliberately open in a location where they are serving a much more diverse community. I'm thinking of one in St. Louis, and I'm thinking of one in upstate New York that deliberately located in a building with a library in a neighborhood opposite public housing. So they also often locate themselves next to public transportation, so somebody doesn't have to have a car to get there. And we made deliberate efforts to reach out to a more diverse community through social clubs, through churches, and other organizations.
Great.
I just saw somebody had a chat about, do you ever give tips to the volunteers? And the answer is no. And they don't want them. They're there because they enjoy the feeling of being part of a community and giving back. Now, that said, I do make it a point, as do many other repair organizers, to get groups, the volunteers and their significant others or spouses, to get together once or twice a year just for fun, to host a potluck party at my house or in a public park and invite the group. But actual tips, no. Nobody in this whole thing makes any money. Not the organizers, not the volunteers.
And if I understand it correctly, these repair cafes happen either once a month or every other month or even every 3 months. So they're not every day.
No, I mean, when I was starting one and I was polling the volunteers, I said, how often do you think we ought to do this? And one woman said, we can be cheerful volunteers if we do it once every other month. And we took a vote. That's what we did. Some of them only meet spring and fall. Some of them meet every other month. Some of them meet every month. But it's, and I saw a question about, is it a particular date? The vast majority of them, I would say, meet on a Saturday, but there are some that meet on a Sunday afternoon because that's when there's a quiet time in the community. But it's not a business, so you're not there Monday 9 to 5.
Right. And so it's also not about taking business away from other people. I saw in your book, there was one person who said he does that also to be seen as a guy who fixes things, and then they can actually pay him on other days when he works in his business.
Right. Sometimes things cannot be repaired that day with the amount of time we've got and with the supplies that we've got. And we've told the repair coaches, number one, you have the authority to say, this is not something I feel that I want to work on. And you don't even have to give an explanation. But if they do have a business, one member of our sewing team has a tailoring and custom sewing business. Somebody, Fix-It Bob on the small electric side, also has a business. And they're permitted to put out their business cards, because often people, once they've seen what a good job the person has done for them for free, say, do you do any other repairs? I've got 6 other things at home. Yes, but if it's not during a repair cafe, I charge for that. And they find it's a very good way to do networking. And the visitor is happy too, because if the repair cafe is only every other month and they need other things repaired, now they know somebody that they can trust.
Great, excellent. I also wanted to say, and I'm going to say it again later, even though I can promise you I get 0 commission or anything, just warm thoughts for saying this. But if you want to get a copy of the book, I put the link in the chat. And so you can order it directly without going through one of the large online retail giants. Order the book directly from the publisher. You can also, of course, order it through your local bookstore and get it through other means where you usually get your books if you know still how to buy books. That's the way to get it. I think you have also an online version or ebook version, but I think the link gets you to the actual print edition. So that's right. That's on your website, Repair Cafe USA. That's still relatively recent that you launched that website. So you want to also create more repair cafes in the whole US and everything that's related to repair cafes.
And we really like to hear your story. We've started Repair Cafe USA because there wasn't a national forum for this, and we want to be able to share people's stories, their advice, connections, to make it an easy place for if I'm looking for a repair outlet to have a one-stop shop. There's 50 of them across the country here. Actually, in the US, there's closer to 100.
So one question that came, and I see you also talk about it in your book, is about documenting successful repairs. So also to have, numbers, statistics, and having basically a success library. I also know that Martine is working very much on getting global statistics. How's your take on it, both at the local level and maybe now at the Repair Cafe USA level?
I know just from ad hoc keeping records that we usually are able to repair about 75 to 80% of what walks through the door. Most of the repair cafes that I've heard from have very high success rates like that. Martine has gotten very organized about keeping track of it, because in the Netherlands, they're working to be able to pressure the manufacturers. I think the item that is the most requested for repair in the Netherlands is a particular brand of a coffee machine. And they were actually able to go back to the manufacturer and say, it's this model number, and here's the problem, and you need to correct this. We are not quite as attuned to that kind of legislative pressure, shall we say, in the US, but we're trying to keep track so we can keep feeding the statistics so that we are eventually able to come up with, we know what the problems are. We keep seeing the same thing over and over. It's either been built to fail because the manufacturer can make more money, or it's defective, or we need to do something about this problem. So keeping track of it's important. And some of the repair cafes, including I think John's in New Paltz, has now actually started to appoint one individual person to keep track of what's the model number, what was brought in, what was it. Okay. Somebody just put in the chat about how about tuning up with Consumer Reports. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. So I think that also relates to scaling up, and Jerry asked about this, about government support being necessary to really make this long-term and also large scale, or a more prevalent option in more places. You said you're getting support from Sustainable Warwick, which is part of the local government, if I understand.
No, not at all. It's more like a club. It's of people who are interested in making the community more sustainable. When I say get support, what I mean is they were willing, because I was a member of the organization. Some of the people volunteered, some of the others came to help with setup. They would promote it on their website to a larger audience than I knew. When I started the Repair Cafe, I'd only lived in this community for 4 years, so I didn't know that many people. But the organization had something like 700 emails of 700 members. So I was able to work with them to communicate what it was we were trying to do with a list of names that I didn't have. It's important to find someone who's got the same, an organization, nonprofit, a club, whatever it is, who has the same goals, but they also have more people and more connections than any one individual does. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Working with coalitions and partner organizations. But going back, so in your case, you don't get money from the city or the county or
we don't get any. Or we don't get money from anybody other than what the grateful visitor decides to take out of his or her pocket and put it in the jar. We don't get a dime.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's see that we can get a few more questions answered and before the hour is up. And I'm sure you'll also be available for questions even afterwards.
Yes,
and
I
you
will.
can, of course, contact Elizabeth and John through Repair Cafe USA, through the website. Big question, anybody who wants to start it will ask him or herself that, how do you recruit your first set of volunteers?
Okay, there's a story to this. I did all of the things one would think would be the way to do this. Newsletter, I sent out, I posted flyers, I sent press releases to the local newspapers, the local radio. I contacted all of the Lions Club, the Rotary, the retired veterans. I spoke at senior centers because a lot of the seniors are looking for something constructive to do with all of their skills. I wasn't getting very far. I only had 3 people signed up to be repair coaches about 10 days before I was supposed to have the first one. And I finally got smart and contacted the mayor of the small village outside of which I live and said, you know, those photos of you in the newspaper where there's this big pair of fake scissors and a ribbon across the doorway of a building, and it's to announce the new hair salon or the whatever it is. I said, would you make yourself available for a photo like that? Because I'm not getting enough. I need 7 more people to host this. And he said, oh, sure, call the Chamber of Commerce. They'll arrange all that. So the Chamber of Commerce did. The Chamber of Commerce invited photographers who wrote up the story for 2 different papers. They got the legislators and the mayor and the vice mayor, etc. Once that picture appeared in the paper, and I didn't have to pay for it, it wasn't an ad. It was the kind of thing that the paper always ran. Then the phone started to ring. But look for people in general who are already busy. It's interesting how so many people at who volunteer for the Repair Cafe or other Fix-It clinic also volunteer for anything else in their community. The ambulance service, dropping off a friendly visitor program, dropping off food for people who need it. You're looking for people who already have a sense of giving back to make the community better. Excellent. You're also looking for the kind of person, someone calls them the big mouths in the community, the kind of people who know a lot of people, the kind of people who will organize all the other moms on the block to do a yard sale. That's the kind of person that you want. Right.
So that's really interesting because your case, I mean, you said you had moved there relatively recently. Mm-hmm. So it's a very good example, I think, because very often people try to find excuses why they can't do this, and I'm just looking at myself here because I moved someplace new last June. And so, you say, well, I wish I could do this, but, people who've lived there longer, they have the networks, they know the people. But that didn't stop you at all. You just kept digging and pushing people till you opened this and had your crew together. And this is a really exciting story. Of course, it's not a guarantee that it works everywhere so smoothly. No. But it is, of course, it's a good sign that, people with different talents can come together. And you made that clear at the beginning. Not everybody who is a volunteer has to be one of the repair coaches. You need other kinds of volunteers too. And so everybody with their different qualities and qualifications can come together. And there is a very specific question here. I don't know if we have addressed this already, but I think it's a very concrete question, and I like this because that means maybe by answering this, we can get somebody to start a program. How do you handle this with tools? Do you have the tools as the organization, or do the repair coaches bring their own tools?
That's a very good question. Many repair coaches prefer to bring their own tools because they're familiar with them. And they know that if I'm volunteering, Fred, am volunteering to do the knife and hand tool sharpening, I know what kind of whetstone I want. I'll bring that myself. They will also give me a list of what are the basic things that would go into a communal repair box. 3 different kinds of glue, special alcohol wipes for getting up this and that, a magnet to pick up the lost screws. in our book, in the appendix, we've got all of that. Here's the list of what the basic communal kit will be. Here's what most people will bring on their own. The people who are doing the sewing repairs with their sewing machine, they want their own machine, but they don't object at all to walking across the aisle to the guy who's doing the small appliance repairs and having that person do the oil. So the point is, most of them will bring their own machine if they need a machine, or they bring their own toolbox, but we have a larger supply box that's available to everybody. Great. And that, again, we bought out of the donation that we were given.
Okay, great. So let me go back to the beginning. You said something very early. You fix around 70 to 80%. Some repair cafes might aim even higher, but it means there's about 20 plus X% that you don't fix. What happens with that?
That's a really good question. One woman brought in one day a hairdryer, and the description was that when she plugged it in, it smelled bad and smoked. So we sent her over to the small appliance team, and they looked at it and said, no, this one's really done. And she said, okay, where's the recycle bin? And the coach said, why don't you take it over to the kids take it apart table? And she said, what's that? We've got a man whose day job, let me think what this is. He said he works with his 8-year-old and his 5-year-old son, and he accepts items that are safe for children to work with, cuts off the plug, either takes off the switch, and he's got little tiny screwdrivers and little tiny wrenches, and he actually shows the kids how to take something apart and explains to them what they're looking at and how it works. So a lot of the things that can't be fixed but are not dangerous for a child to handle if you've taken off the plug and other bits, they go to the kids take it apart table, and then Jim takes the box of stuff home in a tub and stores it in his house until the next repair cafe.
Oh, great. Excellent.
So we've even had people that we've helped come back to another repair cafe and say, here's a bunch of stuff for the kids take it apart table.
So nothing goes.
Oh, and the woman with the hairdryer said, she said, oh, this is the reuse play station, which is better than a recycle bin.
Right. Exactly. Especially since recycling numbers are really not improving, and I mean, they certainly, it will be interesting to see what the statistics say after we have numbers from 2020, which we don't have yet. But I think nobody should rely on too much being actually recycled that ends up in the recycling bin, and so keeping it out of that is really imperative. A very practical question coming in also, how long does one session of a repair cafe usually last?
From the ones I'm familiar with, usually like 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Started in the morning. Ours starts at 10 and it ends at 2. But the people start arriving about 9:15 to unload their cars, move the cars away from where the people are going to park to have access to the seniors where ours is held. And it takes time to set up the tables, to put the signs up so you know which department you're in, small electrics, knife and tool sharpening. And we always say to the coaches and the other volunteers, come when you can, leave when you must. You don't have to stay the whole 4 hours. Maybe you can only give 2 that Saturday. We're grateful for whatever it is that you can give. Others, I think, run for 3 hours.
And one question regarding the coaches, do you give them a training before they start their first session, or do you sit them just there?
No, that's a really good question too. I'm glad you brought that up. Often I'm contacted with people who think that they would like to volunteer, and I'll always say, please come to a repair cafe first. Just spend the first hour walking around and listening and seeing how the interactions work. And then I'd like to pair you with someone else for at least the first time, so you can see, how do you deal with somebody who might be a little more difficult? What do you do if you don't have the right tool? What should you say if this goes, if you don't know the solution to that? So it's a matter of come and see it in action first. Even better yet, bring something of your own that needs to be fixed. And then we pair you, whether you're an adult or a child, we pair you with somebody who's been there longer. And the other interesting thing that happens at the repair cafes Nobody knows how to do everything. And the coaches really love it when they are able to put their heads together and call somebody from across the room and see this. One time a woman brought in these fluffy, like teddy bears, but they were electronic and they were wired, so they would do this little dance for Christmas when you push the button in one of the paws. So it took 3 different kinds of coaches to fix it. The sewing department had to cut them open, had to cut the bear open so they could get at the wiring, and then somebody else had to fix the wiring, and then somebody else had to fix the switch. So they're connecting across the room. It was hilarious. And then the woman cranked it up and blasted Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, and people started to dance. It was really funny.
So it really gets people together, even if they had no idea this was going to happen. We're almost at the end of the hour. I'm going to post again the link to your new repaircafeusa.org website and the link to your book if people want to get it there. But I also saw in the chat already somebody got it just as a used book. So it's already available as a used book, which is also really
great.
Awesome. Yes. So we unfortunately don't have much time left for additional questions. But Elizabeth, I said it. I hope you're not too much surprised by it, but people might contact you afterwards and might reach out to you with lots of questions, especially if they got a little bit inspired today in this session. I want to thank you for covering the whole book with your co-author gone missing. I really hope we'll find him soon again and that everything is okay.
I hope so too.
Yeah, so in any case, I want to thank you for taking time for this great session here today. I want to thank all the participants from all over, from Australia, from the UK, from, of course, from the US, from different states, and for contributing great questions and comments and also ideas. I mean, if you read the whole chat, there's a lot of ideas in there as well, recommendations for next steps. And so again, the chat will be lost in a way. It won't be posted online, so that's confidential. But if you come back later and say, Max, there was something in the chat and I don't quite remember it, you can ask me. I'll send you, if I can find it, I can send you the exact chat message. But this won't be public to the whole internet. So you can be assured. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Max, feel free to give people my direct email address.
I will do that. Okay, wonderful. So I wish everybody a great weekend, good start into the year, and thank you, and see you soon again for another POCACITO network update, and keep repairing and reusing, and if necessary, recycle. Thank you.
And as we say, repair to learn and learn to repair. Thank you very much, everybody.